guys, hi WordCamp. Today I'm going to talk about productivity, and this is not something I have really thought about like 2 or 3 years ago when, for example, when I was studying, when I was in school, in university, I was getting my grades. I was learning pretty well and I was performing well, but it didn't came to my mind that something was wrong because I just performed well. But at one point, I got my first job. And on my first working day, I got this huge task at hand, which needed some research. It was something I had never done before, and it was really scary. So I started my research, I put together a lot of commitment from my side, and I started work from start to finish. I remember the first working day, I went to work at 9, and I stayed in the office until 7. Afterwards, I continued from home, and I continued my research. But whilst doing that, I knew that something wasn't okay, because there were moments where I was reading 1 or 2 lines of text, and I was reading it more than 5 times without getting any meaning from it. So I realized that I'm not performing that well as I would like to. And that's when I started researching what kind of productivity tools there are, what can I do to increase the output I have in my workday. So I tried different stuff, and at one point I realized that there are a set of principles, there are some tools which can help you handle more work in 4 hours than in 8. And today I'm going to talk to you about something which can help you double the amount of work you do in half the time. And that's the lecture The Productive Developer, and obviously it's at WordCamp 2017. Now, a word about myself. I am a trainer. I teach programming courses here in Sofia in the software university for various age groups. Furthermore, I'm a developer at the company Rauset, Ukado Technology. I actually don't deal with WordPress. I'm not a PHP developer. I work in the embedded industry, but I use WordPress for my blog. And furthermore, I do some lectures like this, some presentations at various conferences like WordCamp. If anyone wants to contact me, feel free to follow me, tweet me, connect to me at LinkedIn. And I have this site, it's WordPress site, and I talk in it about productivity and some other related topics. Okay, so how will this go? First, we will talk about the mindset. We will talk about some common problems which there are in our productivity and how we can handle them. But having the solution to a problem doesn't mean we're going to act on it. That's why the second part of my presentation is how to implement. I'm going to give you a tool set, you can call it an algorithm even, to use in your daily work at home to increase the amount of work you do. And in the end, there will be a short amount of time for Q&A and hopefully some discussion. Cool. So the first part is what kills our productivity? What are the common problems to our daily work? What stops us? And I've filtered the 3 most important ones for me and those which can be handled with the tools I'm going to talk to you about today. First is distractions. So I'm sure that actually when you're at work, how many of you keep your Facebook browser, Facebook tab open? Anyone? Yeah, okay, cool. How many of you chat on Messenger while you're working? Okay, cool. That's something I respect, and I have done that as well. And I call all those things and some other stuff like email, Twitter, and whatever distractions. And the lesson how the solution to this is something I learned some while ago when I made a bet. So I made a bet with my roommate that I'm not going to eat any sweets for 1 month. And it was a huge commitment for me. That was something, it was a big step. And in the start, there was actually no problem. For around 10 days, I was able to keep up with it, and I wasn't feeling any urge to buy some candy or whatever. But then, my roommate, he's called Daniel, by the way, he bought a pack of biscuits. And those biscuits were the most delicious thing I've ever seen. They were cocoa biscuits, which were round and curly, and I still remember them. So, the bad part was that it wasn't that he bought a pack of biscuits. He actually opened it in front of me, ate a few. That was okay. The big problem was that he left the rest of the pack in the middle of the table in the living room, where I was working every day. So, the next day I woke up, I went to my desk, I sat there, and those biscuits were staring at me. They were waiting for me to go there and eat them. And I had some willpower. I was able to endure for 1 day, for 2 days. But on the third day, I just couldn't hold myself. I went there and ate the whole pack. So I had to buy my roommate a new pack of biscuits, and I was the best. And the thing I learned from from this story is that the easiest way to deal with all those distractions is to eliminate them completely. You don't have to be some kind of strong willpower kind of person to deal with distractions. I know I wasn't. The easiest thing you can do is just get that pack of biscuits and remove them from sight. Put them in the fridge, just put them in the trash bin or whatever. So when you have your phone at work, the easiest thing you can do is just shut it down or shut the internet down. Don't look at it, put it aside, and then you're done. You won't feel the urge to look at Facebook or Twitter or whatever if you just don't have that distractions constantly poking you with that annoying messenger sound. Okay, second part is multitasking. And this is a huge one. Many people do it, and some might argue this is inevitable. The most common example is emails. So, how many of you have had the pleasure of writing some code, and then an urgent email comes from a client, your boss, or whatever, and you have to answer it? Anyone? Yeah, I know. I had that same story as well. Well, honestly, you can't really ignore your emails. I mean, you have to read them. You can't just say, boss, I'm not going to respond to my emails anymore. You have to handle that. But there's an intelligent way you can handle both those cases. You can handle emails and write code without multitasking. And I'll give you an example. Imagine you have 1 hour where you have to read your emails and write some code. One solution to this is to spend 5 minutes in code, then you get an email and you go write an email. Then you spend 5 minutes in code again, then you get an email and go back to emails again. But by doing that, you're not really productive because that is multitasking. Instead, what you can do is shut down your Gmail and focus only on coding for 30 minutes. After those 30 minutes, you can go back to reading your emails without any problem. And that way you still spend the same amount of time reading emails. But it will be a lot more productive. And I can explain this thing by doing tasks in bulk. How many of you have played there was this great game called Need for Speed? Anyone? Okay. Now, imagine that you're riding your car with 200 kilometers per hour and you're one lap after everyone else. And then you crash. You hit the wall. Even if you're really, really ahead of everyone else, there's a huge chance someone will pass by you and win the race instead. Because it takes a huge amount of time to accelerate and reach your optimal speed again. And the same thing happens with multitasking. When you write code for 5 minutes and read emails for 5 minutes, you can't really get to a top speed because it takes some time to get to your optimal focus and really get in the zone of only coding and focusing on one problem. Instead, if you, as I told you, spend 30 minutes in the one thing and 30 minutes in another, then you have the opportunity to be focused both for reading emails and for coding. And the third thing is procrastination, the thing with delaying tasks. And in my experience, the biggest reason for this is when we have this huge task at hand. Imagine that you have this client coming to you and he says, oh, well, I want you to build me a site and it has to have Gutenberg on it and it has to have has Yoast plugin and some custom other plugin or whatever. And you know that that thing will take you like 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever. When you have such a big task at hand, you will do everything you can to delay. For example, instead of starting work, you're going to go to the kitchen, have a cup of coffee, speak with the beautiful colleague next to you from female gender or the other way around, whatever the case is, and whatever. But the point is, you are going to delay it, and that's natural, because when you have this huge task at hand, it's really hard to get started with it. But we are programmers. We know that if we break up tasks, big tasks, in small chunks of work, they're a lot more feasible. When you have only a chunk of 20 minutes of work you have to do, then it's pretty much easier to do it. But even if we know this, it's really not so easy to have that mindset. It's not so easy to implement that kind of behavior. We always tend to think about the big picture, the big task at hand. And that's why I come to my second point. Having these solutions isn't enough. So we know how to handle multitasking, distractions, and procrastination. But knowing the solution to something doesn't mean I'm going to solve it. For example, if I want to become a bodybuilder and build some muscle, I know that I have to go to the fitness. And I know every one of you know that. But I doubt that any one of us will just go there and start, even though we know the solution. At least I know I wouldn't start so easily. It takes some mental pressure, mental work to get the mindset to really go to fitness every day. So I'm going to give you a tool set. I'm going to give you something you can start following, and having the right mindset, you can implement this routine, this habit, this discipline in your daily work. So the thing which is centered around this lecture is a technique which has changed the view of how I do work today. It's called the Pomodoro. Has anyone heard of this? Okay, cool. Has anyone used it? Okay, nice. Oh, so actually, every one of you who has heard of it uses it. That's really cool. That talks well about the technique. For those of you who don't know it, I'm going to explain the basic workflow. It's pretty simple, actually. You break your work into tasks of 25 minutes. After every iteration, you take a 5-minute break. Every fourth iteration is followed by a bigger break of 15 minutes. That's the basic workflow, and yes, it's that simple. And being so simple sounds pretty stupid at first. Like, how can something which just tells me to break my work in 25 minutes is going to help me? Why does this work? How can it work? Won't it just be distracting to have a break every 25 minutes? Yes, those are questions I have asked myself as well. But let me justify my argument here. There are some scientific evidence, or at least empirical studies, which show that humans can't hold their attention for long. After a certain amount of time, you just can't endure, and you get to that slope where you can't pay any attention. For example, I'm seeing some people already which are staring at their phone or sleeping, so that's pretty normal. I mean, we have had this big conference, which is like, I don't know, maybe 8 hours already, and it's normal to be tired. Well, you're somewhere there. And I have had that as well. When I had my first working day, and I had that task I told you about, I was in the bottom. because I was just focusing on doing the work, not taking any break, and just doing the task, because I wanted to make it as fast as possible. But that way I wasn't really productive. Instead, when you use Pomodoro, when you get to that point where you start going down, you take a 5-minute break, and if you use it effectively, that slope can start going up again. And you can start going to your optimal speed again. Maybe it won't be as high as the first time, but it will still be pretty high. And that's the main principle behind this technique. Also, using Pomodoro, it allows you to have the right mindset. It actually forces you to break tasks into small pieces. As I told you, when you have big tasks, you can break them in small pieces. But just knowing that isn't enough to implement. Having Pomodoro, you are forced to only think about the small task which will take you 25 minutes at hand. Because when you have this big task, if you think, oh, I have to work for 8 hours now to get the work done, that's hard for you to get started. But if you just promise yourself that you will only work for 25 minutes, that's a lot more feasible. And also, the breaks are pretty good for you. As I told you, they help you restart that process of gaining attention again. But apart from that, it allows you to think about the big picture. Because when we're actively doing work, when we're focused on one task, you don't really see the big picture. You focus on writing some fields, writing some variables, implementing an algorithm you're thinking about, but you don't think about whether there's another solution to this or something like that. The breaks help you for that. Have you ever had those moments where you have this defect at work, which you're working the whole day, but then you go for a beer, and when you get back, you suddenly know the answer? Anyone? Yeah, I know that. I actually had this situation where I was solving a programming task. I couldn't solve it, and I just left it. 1 year later, I went to sleep, I just closed my eyes, and then it came to me what the solution is. And that was 1 year later, so it was kind of a huge break, you know. But small breaks can help you as well. Okay, so that's Pomodoro. If you want to have one big takeaway from this presentation, then tomorrow or on Monday, go to Google, write Pomodoro timer, track your time, start using it, try focusing for 25 minutes as much as you can, and I'm sure that it will have a huge benefit for you. But I want to show something else as well. I want to take this a bit further for those of you who already use it, and for those of you who want to really commit to something big, commit to really taking your productivity to the next level. And I'm talking about a site. It's called Kanban Flow. Has anyone heard of this? Wow, that's really cool. I actually didn't know that was popular. I mean, it's still not really popular. We're like 50 people and 4 people know it, so that's not a huge percentage. But anyway, this is a site which allows you not only to track your work using a Pomodoro. This allows you to plan and measure your progress and improve if you want to. And that's why I was struggling with the internet before the lecture. Oh, sorry. Let's try this again. Okay, we got it. Yeah. Cool. So, I'm going to show you a live demo. I was struggling with the Wi-Fi before the presentation, but it was really important because I wanted to show you this site in action. So, let's hope the gods of internet are graceful with us and it works. Okay, it didn't show up. Let me escape. Cool. This is the site. Maybe you don't see enough. But anyway, what's the idea here? You have different columns. Like the Kanban methodology, it defines that you have to have a column to do, doing, and done, or later, something like that. This allows you to customize and have different columns. In those columns, you can create your own tasks. For example, I want to schedule a task for today. I click the plus button. Let's say the task is get drunk at WordCamp Sofia after party, and afterwards you can put a cover. This cover I use to estimate how many pomodoros I think it will take. You know, one pomodoro is 25 minutes, and I have from 1 to 3. I have a greater than 3 as well. I tend not to use it since it really breaks the purpose of this whole thing. But for this one, I'm going to use it. It's just a great opportunity, so I should really dedicate to that task. Afterwards, you have an embedded timer here. It's a Pomodoro timer. You select a task, the one I created just now, and click Start. Then the clock starts ticking, and after 25 minutes, you get this notification which says, time to take a break, go walk out, drink some tea, coffee, whatever, and come back and continue. This is the whole site, but apart from that, you have data, which is really important for your progress. For example, you can see what was your progress for 30 days behind, even more. That's just the default option. And this is how I've been using it normally. I try to make like 10 pomodoros per day. As you see in the last week, I wasn't really productive. But yeah, it was an exception. I was just really excited about WordCamp. And yeah, that's the whole site actually. You have tasks, which are different colors, your estimation, and you can track it, how many pomodoros you do per day, and you have statistics for a lot of time behind. Cool. So, what's so cool about that? How is it any different? Well, does anyone know someone who is a bodybuilder? Anyone, or someone who is really, really keen into fitness, really thinks about fitness? Okay, maybe you know more developers, but yeah, you know, there are bodybuilder developers as well. Cool, but there are not a lot. So I have friends who are really keen into fitness, who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to become this strong man, and I'm going to do what it takes. Those people every day track how much calories they intake. Every time they go to the shop and get their food, they first have a kitchen scale, and they just measure what weight is the food they're eating, and they estimate how much calories would that be. That way, they know just how much they have to eat every day in order to lose weight or gain weight. And if you want to be serious about your productivity, about the work you do, I believe every one of us should measure his work as well. And this is a great tool that allows you to really have commitment. Really commit to a certain number of pomodoros per day and track it and see if you're meeting your goal or not. For example, if it's 6 o'clock already and you're at 8 pomodoros, then maybe you haven't done such good work. Maybe you should either stay a bit longer or compensate the next day in order to really have the discipline of making as much pomodoro as you have promised yourself. And also it helps you for avoiding the burnout problem. For example, there was one time where I made 20 pomodoros in one day. That's like 10 hours of productive work. I'll mention productive work shortly after. But I did that for 2 days. And the third day, I got into this existential crisis. I didn't know what to do with my life. I was like, oh man, I'm spending so much time coding. Maybe I should take a break. So I played Counter-Strike for 1 week and didn't do anything. That was my way of burning out. And this allows you to really see when you're actually overworking yourself and when you should stop, because it really, there is somewhat of a gamification in this, because when you get to 10, you're like, oh, I'm going to do 2 more, then 2 more again, and at one point you're like, maybe I should kill myself. So it really keeps you from doing that. Please don't go there. Okay, so I told you that I make 10 pomodoros per day. If some of you calculated that, that's like 4 hours, or 4 hours and a half, if you add up all the hours. But, although this is not a whole working day, this is not work. This is productive work. And there's a huge difference. So, when you go to the fitness, I really like using that example because it really pictures Pomodoro well. When you go to the fitness and you want to run, you have two options. You can either walk on the treadmill for 2 hours or sprint as much as you can for 30 minutes. Or at least use this special kind of training where you gain a lot of efficiency in a small amount of time. That's what Pomodoro does for you. With Pomodoro, you don't walk when you're working. You're actually sprinting and giving as much as you can, because when the timer starts, you promise yourself that you won't distract yourself, you won't interrupt yourself, and you will give all you have for those 25 minutes. That's how you sprint at work, and that's how you can output a lot more in 4 hours than 8 hours of simple work. So, in sum, I hope I convince you that caring about your productivity is important. If you want to excel as a developer, as a blogger, as an artist, I'm sure that we should care about how efficient we are in our work. And you can try starting by trying Pomodoro out. If you don't want to try Kanban flow, if it looks too complex for you, or you don't want to commit that much, then just start by typing Pomodoro timer in Google. Find that, track your work for 1 day, see how you feel. Then do it the next day. Try it for 1 week and see if there's a difference. I'm sure that this might not work for everyone, but if it does for you, then it can change the way you view your work, you view the way you work in your work and in your daily lives. Thank you.